I'd like to welcome everyone here to this regular council meeting for the Township of Puslinch on February 5th, 2020. And we'll start with disclosure of pecuniary interests. Not seen any? Okay. We have no closed meeting. Adoption of the previous minutes. Moved by Councillor Goyda, seconded by Councillor Spoulos that the minutes of the following meeting be adopted as written and distributed. A, January 22nd, 2020, regular council meeting. Any questions or comments on those minutes? Nope. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Any business arising out of the minutes? No, that's good. We don't have any public meetings. Communications. Correspondence from Conservation Halton with respect to the Conservation Halton draft guidelines. Any questions or comments on those? No? Okay. You know what? Director of Finance, I'm not going to get into that BMA because that might put us past the delegation. So
Okay,
I'll ask the
for sure.
delegation to come down first. We have a couple minutes. So we will start off with, I believe, Pasquale. Come down for our delegation. Welcome. Thank you. Good to see you again. Yes. She'll get that set up for you, and whenever you're ready, you can begin.
All right. Okay. Okay, it does work. Okay.
Perfect.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor Seeley and esteemed councillors for having the opportunity, give us the opportunity for Safe Communities, Wellington County, to address the Puslinch Council regarding the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. For those who don't know me, my name is Pasquale Costanzo. I'm co-chair of Safe Communities Wellington County, also technical services for the Wellington County Roads Department. Before I get into any details about the plan, I want to give you a bit of a refresher on Safe Communities Wellington County. I've had the privilege of being on the committee since 2012. It's been a couple of years. And I'm currently co-chair along with Angel Bell, as she is chair of the Safe Communities Committee for the town of Minto. And there's also an executive team that includes representation from the Wellington County OPP, Staff Sergeant Stephen Thomas, Guelph Wellington Paramedic Service Chief Stephen Dewar, Wellington Dufferin Guelph Public Health Amy Estelle, Township of Mapleton Mayor Greg Davidson, also our program coordinator Christine Belt that keeps everything all organized for us. More about the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. The Ministry of Solicitor General has mandated all municipalities to create their own Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. The County of Wellington is unique in a unique situation. Through the Safe Communities Wellington County, we already have the framework in place that is required and mandated by the province. And in itself, that is a big feat. The framework is intended to be universal and requires planning at all levels. Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan is a collaborative process to ensure that services are working together. As I already mentioned, our executive alone is made up of residents, municipal council, emergency services, Wellington Dufferin Guelph Public Health, and the County of Wellington. Adding to our executive, there is a leadership table that includes representation from health, family health teams, education, not-for-profit businesses, just to name the few. Next slide. This is an overview of what the plan will look like and is required by the municipalities. We will have a message from both our county warden and police services board chair stating the collaboration taking place and the importance of Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. This will be followed by an introduction detailing the County of Wellington population, municipalities, telling everyone how we will achieve the goals and objectives laid out in the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. The model itself is a concept of community safety and well-being planning that has been championed by Ontario working groups on collaborative, risk-driven community safety and Ontario Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services. Then we have our structure that is the Safe Communities Wellington County that's already in place. I'll provide more details about the model as we move along. Finally, measuring results, ensuring that we are making the impact we want on community safety and well-being. This will include keeping our own statistics, reporting on the outcome of the projects and services we have created. Safe Communities Wellington County already has this structure in place. The plan will also include priority based on Safe Communities Wellington County priority setting exercise, including input from the Township of Puslinch as well. Knowing that statistics are older, we are currently looking at updating motor vehicle collision data from the Wellington OPP, hospital stays and emergency room visits, as well as mobility data from the Wellington Dufferin Guelph Public Health. A great example of success is our impact team, where Wellington County OPP and mental health clinicians from the Canadian Mental Health Association collaborated to provide the most effective treatment to individuals on call who are in crisis. The Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan is designated to be a strategic document written at a micro level to allow interchangeability based on the fluid needs and priorities of each municipality. So what does Safe Communities Wellington County need from the Township of Puslinch to do? As I mentioned already, we have statistics from our priority setting exercises specific to the county and each of the member municipalities. Safe Communities Wellington County and Wellington Dufferin Guelph Public Health will work together with the Township of Puslinch to determine your priorities based on statistics and Safe Communities Wellington County recommendations. Just like Safe Communities Wellington County, these priorities and actions will be reviewed every 3 years. This is an outline of what the report will look like. The reason why it's important to have input in the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan is because the Township of Puslinch and all our member municipalities makes the County of Wellington unique. What each of our municipalities decide to achieve will be different from what the Township of Puslinch would like to do. Safe Communities Wellington County wants to make sure that each municipality shines to show the extraordinary things that have been put in place and partnerships that keep the municipality safe and well. What will that success look like? The goal of the municipality is to mitigate situations of elevated risk. Proactively identifying those risks, then promote and support programs that achieve successful outcomes. This brings us to the model that I mentioned earlier. So social development, which is the green circle on the outside, addresses the outlying causes of social issues through upstream approaches that promote and maintain individual and community wellness. This includes opportunities for employment, income adequate housing, access to education, other supports that promote social and economic inclusion. Prevention, which is the blue circle, applies proactive strategies to the known and identified risks that are likely to result in harm to individuals or communities left unmitigated. Risk intervention, which is the yellow circle, identifying and responding to situations of acute elevated risk and mobilizing immediate interventions before an emergency or crisis-driven response is required, such as a situation table or kitchen table talks. And the red dot in the middle is emergency response. Circumstances that require intervention by first responders like police and paramedics or other crisis-driven services in the human services system, such as homelessness, eviction, mental health crises. The framework also recognizes that it's beneficial to maximize efforts in the outer rings to reduce harm to individuals who have their needs met before the situation escalates into a crisis, and to prevent increase in demand to more costly downstream interventions with police and other emergency response systems. This approach to planning recognizes that the complex risks to safety and well-being cannot be addressed in isolation by any one organization or sector, and that too often situations rooted in situations like mental health, inadequate housing, neighborhood safety, social isolation, or addiction end up requiring police and paramedics, hospital emergency departments, or other crisis-driven services. In many cases, these issues could be addressed earlier and more effectively through greater collaboration among sectors, including police, paramedics, education, public health, healthcare, social services, and other community-based human services agencies. Community safety and well-being plan is a collaboration process to ensure that services are working together so that those in need of help receive the right response at the right time by the right service provider. This will be the structure. Working together will be the County of Wellington Police Services Board and the Safe Communities Wellington County Executive, including the leadership table that the Township of Puslinch will have representation on. Unfortunately for us, this structure has been already in place for the last 7 years. As we also have action groups that are currently the motor vehicle collisions, fall preventions, and intentional self-harm, but definitely not limited to these three. As we all can recognize, each municipality is unique, and that's what makes the County of Wellington so unique and extraordinary. While fall prevention may be one of your primary focuses, you may want your priorities to include accidental poisoning, sports and recreation, enabling you to participate or even champion an accidental poisoning or sports and recreation action group. Other priorities across the Wellington County beyond accidental poisoning, sports and recreation are motor vehicle on and off road, falls, and intentional self-harm. We also have identified agricultural, machinery and tools, and pedestrian and cycles as other action groups. Again, all these priorities are identified through a priority setting exercise with the use of statistics, feedback from over 66 stakeholders who have participated in the day of the priority settings, including feedback from public surveys and informational interviews from healthcare providers. All the action tables will be supported by evidence to ensure that we have a greater impact on safety and well-being of the residents. The Township of Puslinch and across the County of Wellington. So, moving forward in the next steps, we need to return to the Wellington Police Services Board and draft a community safety well-being plan by early spring. Over the next 2 months, we will work with the Township of Puslinch and recommend evidence-informed priorities and action groups for the Township of Puslinch. Once we have all our member municipalities' priorities and actions set, we will incorporate it into the actual plan. We will then present to the Safe Communities Wellington County Executive and Leadership Table for further input, aiming to present at the Leadership Table in the meeting in May. From there, we'll present it to the Wellington Police Services Board for approvals. Then, with the assistance of the Wellington County Communications Department, it will go to print. The final document will be brought to the Wellington Police Services Board in the early fall and finally approved by resolution of the County of Wellington Council. Then finally submission to the Ministry of Solicitor General. That brings me to the end. That was pretty quick there, but does anyone have any questions or any comments?
Thank you, Pasquale. So
I do have most of my team here that can help me with questions answering. So yeah, I'm not the only one here. So actually, most of the team is actually here today.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that presentation. That was excellent. I do have a few questions. So the idea of this working group is that if we make identify an action group, say speeding, right? When the previous inspector of the OPP, Scott Lawson, prior to his retirement, had mentioned that they receive 7 to 10 calls per day on speeding. So this would be the avenue for us politicians to say, we would like to see this addressed, and then it could be countywide, and then that will help dictate service delivery. Is that kind of how it will work? You identify it down in the action group, it gets support behind it, and then eventually it makes it to the presentation of the Police Services Board, and then maybe there's additional staff added. Is that kind of the process or the idea of this group?
More of the groups would be right now we have motor vehicle collisions, which is kind of the group that you're talking about. So then there's people that volunteer on that group. And I'm part of that group, and they bring back action items to help mitigate speeding or accidents or anything like that. So they try to bring along programs to help with speeding. So I know there's one program right now that they're considering, which is a pace car system where they will educate like a group of individuals in your actual town of Pushlanch to actually have individuals that drive a certain stretch of road at 50 and dedicated to drive 50 of that section of road. So we are trying to work with speeding and have action groups that work towards that. So that those are some avenues that we're trying to help with that. So then Pushlanch could have an action group along with that, so they could work along with the county's action group as well to help promote programs to help with speeding or accidents or motor vehicles in general. So yes, you have the right concept of what the action group would be working towards. I'm not sure if I'm right or wrong. I think I'm pretty.
I would support that,
Yeah.
and I would add to that the analytics portion of that, so the study of the data that supports the direction
Yes.
we're going as well.
Then, yeah, it's the statistics that will drive us to recommend that action group for your community. It could be one of the leading requirements in your committee, in your community. So that would drive
Well,
what
and
action groups would be.
I understand people are expensive and, you know, it's, everybody's always struggling to increase their budgets. And I just see this as an avenue to justify, instead of having 7 officers dedicated to traffic, I don't know the exact numbers, maybe going to 12 or 13, because I've heard from other mayors and county councilors, the main complaint is speeding throughout the county. So I know south of the border, it's, you can't go a mile without seeing two officers, and I don't know how they fund it, but, you know, I think our job is to show that need and show support to the police service board and say, yes, we need this because our constituents want it. So I think it's a great avenue. So I'll open up to Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, thank you for coming today.
Oh, thank you.
In the model, colorful model that you showed, you talked a lot about prevention being kind of the outlying. So if we can do a lot more with prevention, maybe we can prevent some of the
Yes.
stuff happening in the middle. So I guess tacking on to the motor vehicle line, just wondering if you had any examples of maybe some prevention for the motor vehicle collision, like just some examples about what we're doing with prevention in that avenue.
Yeah, that's the one model I brought up is
Yeah.
they're working on a pace car system where you want to provide education to a group of individuals within your community. There'd be more like volunteers that would help try to calm down traffic in their community. So that's one avenue. There's also other avenues. They're teaching at schools. They do like a bike rodeo as well. They're trying to infuse the youth and realize, you know, it's driving in general is more of a privilege than a right. So then they're trying to teach young minds in the future that hopefully these young people respect the rules of the road. So we have done those types of programs as well to help future drivers in our county or even in the province, so that hopefully that they respect the rules of the road. So those are some of the programs that have been part of the motor vehicle collision action group. So
Okay, and have you been,
no.
You know what? I'll just ask you to maybe just come down
Yeah,
beside
yeah.
Pasquale, because then that way the microphone will pick up what you're saying for everybody that's watching at home 2 days from now.
It seems that the questions seem to be revolving around my world, so it probably makes sense for me.
Thank you.
Maybe introduce yourself as well.
I will, yeah. My name
is.
is Paul Richardson. I'm the acting inspector interim detachment commander for Wellington County in lieu of Scott Lawson retiring. If I may. Through your worship, one of the benefits, and I have some experience from this in another community, is the breaking down of silos. And this brings all of the people to the table, all of the stakeholders to the table that you need at the table. So for example, we had an issue with motor vehicle collisions. Through our Safe Communities Committee, we had Ministry of Transportation at the table, we had local politicians, we had the police, we had fire, and we were able to come up with a long-term sustainable solution to address the issue. Part of that was an enforcement aspect, but there was also a media component to it. There was road use components to it. So we had all of those people at the table to come up with the long-term sustainable solution. Instead of just going to the police, we have everybody at the table. And I think that's sort of the macro approach that we're looking at here.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
collaboration? Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, that kind of ties into, I was just going to ask what other sort of subcommittees that you're working with? Like, what are some of the main sort of action groups that?
Oh, well, there's also a fall prevention group
Okay.
that looks after seniors. Like they come up with the exercise programs for seniors, so that as we age, our muscle mass does decrease. So they use that as another avenue, because falls for seniors when you fall. I know as I get older, I don't like falling; it hurts more. So those are some of the programs that our fall prevention has done. Also, we have intentional self-harm action group. They are more working towards like a kitchen talk sessions where they find people who had the addiction problems in the past and talk to young people or people in general about how they survived their addictions and still are fighting their want to not be addicted to that kind of thing. So that is also another action group. Those are the main three that we are part of, is the motor vehicle, fall prevention, and intentional self-harm is another group. So those are the main three groups that we have. So they work with programs as well and these are all like small municipalities, or like just like Puslinch, that they're trying their best to inform the people within their own municipality. So.
Okay.
Hopefully that answered. I'm not sure they add more to it.
I will add
Christine,
a little bit, yeah.
This is Christine right there. She's yes.
I know. I'll keep them up front. Do you want me to come
You
up?
might as well come down. Just then it's on record. You can stay.
I was just gonna be a gentleman.
Yes. If you want, you just grab that one on the front and spin it around.
Okay. Thank you. I'm Christine Viet, the Program Coordinator for Safe Communities, Wellington County. Just extending what Pasquale was just mentioning, our action groups are not just like the people that sit on our action groups, like for example with the Falls, we're collaborating with the Senior Center for Excellence, Vaughan, Victoria Order of Nurses. So we're partnering with Victoria Order of Nurses in order to bring the SMART program across Wellington County. We're also doing, so we're all collaborating. Again, it's working with everybody to bring these services to prevent these falls from happening, for example, right? And same thing with motor vehicle collisions, as well as with the intentional self-harm group. We have a representative from Suicide Awareness Council. We have someone from Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Centre Wellington. So again, everybody that's part of our group, we're all collaborating together to make a safer and a better Wellington County.
I think we talked in the presentation about having the right services in the right place at the right time.
Exactly.
The upstream of that is having the right people at the table with decision-making authority to put those solutions in place. And that's what we're trying to achieve here.
Exactly.
Councillor Bomer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for this excellent presentation. We've talked a lot about the PACE car program, and I know it was talked about our last Safe Communities meeting a fair bit, and I can tell you my wife has been operating the PACE car in my neighborhood for several years, and it certainly has changed the driving behavior. Neighbors now make their best effort to get out on the road before she does. They don't get caught behind her. So it can be effective, or it can have an effect. But a couple things you mentioned. You're talking about the upstream intervention. I'm a huge believer in this. And I wonder, maybe Christine, you could help me understand. One of the things you've talked about a fair bit is the 40 Essentials workshop.
Yeah.
Is that, maybe you could help everybody understand what that piece is and how that fits into this upstream interventions?
Sure. With the 40 assets, so it's the 40 strengths that kids need, that youth need in order to succeed, essentially. And we call it the 40 assets because it includes external assets as well as internal assets. And a lot of these assets can be brought in, again, from the village that they live in, right? And so it's collaboration. And we want, so we are bringing these different workshops to different municipalities across Wellington County in order to teach, not the kids, but the adults, the parents, the coaches, the school bus drivers, everybody, so that if they can identify different strengths in different children, they can adopt different strategies to raise those strengths in these kids. They actually just recently did a bunch of studies in the States as well as in Canada, and the average amount of assets that kids between the ages of 13 and 16 have are under 20 assets, which with kids that have under 20 assets, they actually do engage in risky behavior, which actually falls under all of our priorities. So kids that engage in risky behavior will fall, will actually choose to, for example, jump off the bridge in Bellwood and hurt themselves, right? I'm just, you know what I mean? Like, so they will engage in drugs. They will engage in motor vehicle, like drinking and driving, drugs, impaired driving. Unfortunately, in some cases, they don't have the assets to be able to cope with any hardships that happen in high school or in elementary school. And unfortunately, some kids harm themselves. And that's where the suicide piece comes in. So it actually, with the 40 assets, bringing these workshops to across Wellington County, it will actually help prevent our youth from engaging in risky behaviors that, in the end, affect our healthcare system, affect our emergency responses. And so it's the proactive approach that we, as Safe Communities Wellington County, can actually bring to the table. We can do this, and we can all do this. It's amazing. And that's why I love it so much.
Well, thank you for that, because the Optimus Club here is thinking of sponsoring
Yes.
that event, and I've tried several times to explain it to them, but I've never done it as well as you do, so I'm glad to hear it again. You also mentioned collaboration in your presentation, Pasquale, and myself and Councillor Kittredge from Centre Wellington both sit on the Farm and Home Safety and on Safe Communities Wellington County. And what I thought was interesting to see, because I'm relatively new, we didn't have a representative on Safe Communities until last year, that it was interesting to see how seamlessly, when I think the two of us saw each other at the same two events, he managed to sort of make it an action group within Safe Communities as well. It was a natural fit, and to see how quickly Safe Communities were willing to take it on as an action group and provide that organization spot on their website, I thought that demonstrated the kind of collaboration you're talking about, and I think that's great because it demonstrates the flexibility that this group can provide to the communities to address the concerns as they find them. The other piece that I learned early on that you spoke to a bit today was the importance of statistics. I remember early on when I was there was a presentation on falls statistics, and it was great because then it refocused where Safe Communities was going to focus their efforts, because the falls weren't occurring in the county where they thought they were, and the stats were higher in some places than others. And what they want to do is try to understand that and direct resources there. So I thought immediately when I saw that, I realized this isn't just a knitting group or a feel-good group. This is a group actually working on real numbers and trying to address things in a feel-good way, but in a meaningful feel-good way too. So that was good. I'm hoping, as I learned when I got there and talked to Councillor Kittredge, Centre Wellington also is, the other thing we have in common is we're both are representatives from the only communities that don't have a local Safe Communities chapter. Right. Is there supports available from Safe Communities if someone wanted to get one started locally?
Yes, originally Puslinch did have a group. They fell apart, I think, was it 2 years ago?
Yeah, that was the COPS committee.
COPS committee, and they dismantled, I believe, and then now I guess we will provide any kind of assistance that we can to help you find a group or put a group together. That's part of our whole mandate, really, is to ensure that you do have a group to help with all these action groups that you'll have after our priority setting group for you. So those are more or less volunteers. I believe they're all volunteers on those groups. So. Yeah, so it's something that we would strive for and assist you as best we can. So
okay, super. That's great.
We actually have two individuals who were on the Puss Lunch Cops Committee in the back of the room. So they did a lot of great stuff here when when it was in full throttle, and we're educating everybody about what they were doing, and one of their main goals was speed reduction as well, right? So it's actually come full circle.
Super. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Goyda?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm definitely happy to have this update on the Safe Communities Plan, and I would wholeheartedly support Puss Lunch being part of the plan. I think I was going to ask, very similar to Councillor Balmer, if the framework or the model allows for or assists with exactly what he was speaking of, sort of a more local subcommittee or something under the umbrella that would work in collaboration. And Councillor Balmer just told me this week about this COPS committee that I actually didn't even know existed. And the reason I had been inquiring about that is in the village of Arkle, which is the part of the township that I live, last summer we went through a series of, there was a whole bunch of cars being broken into overnight and garages being broken into, and there was a little bit of a concern for safety in the community. And speed is also always coming up as a concern in that community. And we had a resident who had come up with this idea of maybe we should have kind of like a community safety open house to provide strategies to, you know, how do we prevent this kind of things, all of these things exactly that we're talking of. Sorry, I'm talking too fast. And Councillor Balmer explained that that's exactly what this COPS committee had done in the past. And so I think it would be really great if we could somehow, I think that there is definitely a need or a want of something like that from the residents in our community. And I think there's a willingness from members of this council to do something like that. So I'm happy to hear that that could somehow work in conjunction with this plan to implement something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. We're encouraging all municipalities to do that, as well as have representation on the leadership table with because the individual municipal safe communities groups have an opportunity to be on the leadership table,
Right.
as well as representation from council as well. So similar to, let's see, Mapleton. Mapleton's a great example that has everything. We have representation from Mayor Greg Davidson being on our leadership table as well as our executive, and they also have a Mapleton Safe Communities group. So they've got the whole package on the leadership table that are part of Safe Communities.
That's great. Okay.
The other thing too, if you do have residents that are interested in starting something, I'm pretty sure we could provide them with some sort of assistance as well to try to connect. Maybe
Right.
you have a person in Eris that is interested, or maybe someone from Aberfoyle. Maybe we'll try to find a way to connect them and actually start a group that way. So we need your help to find those people in order to
Right.
start a group. So it's grassroots needs to start
Yep.
here at the Township of Puss Lunch, and we're here as a committee, as Safe Communities, to help grow another group out of nothing, really, to tell you the truth. So we want to help, but it's your residences that call you that we will try
Exactly.
to our best to connect them and try to find the avenues and resources to become a great group of safe communities, right? So
Yeah.
that's our interest, really.
Good. Okay. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Councilor Spillis?
Yes, I fully support the program and also the creation of our local little subcommittee. My questions are more or less nuts and bolts. The final document that gets submitted to the Police Services Board, is that a generic document, or will you break it down by each township's needs and wants type of thing?
So there will be a section within the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan that will have specific municipal data and what your different priorities are going to be. That's kind of what we decided upon. It differs from other municipalities, but slightly, because we're all unique and we all have to kind of do our own thing. But we will also have different areas, as we know, as we were mentioning about the framework, right? And so we will have breakdowns based on the framework and where different programs are. Hopefully, a lot of the things are in the prevention piece and the social competencies piece. Obviously, that's what we're looking for in our community safety and well-being plan, but it'll be kind of laid out in that manner.
Okay, moving on to statistics. You mentioned that important aspect is getting the statistics, like, for example, speeding. Will you help with providing the necessary equipment on roadside to monitor the speeding? Or is that something that we have to take as on our own as part of our budget and pay for that?
I hate to answer a question with a question, but what sort of equipment are you referring to?
Well,
Because we have
the-
speed measuring devices that give us an idea of traffic counts and speed, or we have radar in the cars themselves?
They're looking at something on roadside, a cable across the road that measures the traffic count and the speeds.
That would be more of a municipal or a county works department that would implement that type of equipment.
Question
We
to
do
you
those.
then.
The county of Wellington in general, we review all our traffic counts on county roads. We don't do anything locally, but all our county roads have all the information. We do have speed classifications. We know what kind of trucks are on our roads. We have all that sort of data on county roads. And if you let me know, we'll provide you with that information. It's all public knowledge, really, so.
Because we want to move it from this level up to say this is a problem, and as you mentioned before, we have to have the stats in place, and the only way you get the stats is to put something across the road.
Yeah, and I guess also too, the Wellington OPP would have speeding tickets that they have issued over time too. That's part of that, also the.
We have, I was just gonna mention, we have a speed spy device too that can be deployed, and that gives us vehicle counts. It doesn't give us vehicle size, but it gives us vehicle counts and the speeds of those vehicles. So it's a great data collection tool.
Okay, and the last one is on the process. We have a local committee, and they get a group of citizens together, and everybody brings their issues to the table type of thing. And the outcome is we have to analyze this in more detail. We push it up the line, and then do we wait for something to come back to us in a way of support to get this additional data?
I mean, in terms
Or
of the
what-
speed itself,
I'm talking in general, like, for instance, fall prevention data type of thing. Or do you get that
so we-
automatically from the?
Yeah, so we have connections with the Wellington Dufferin Guelph Health Board, Health.
Okay, so you'll get it, okay.
So then we would ask them to provide any information that they have available. So we do have the organizations within our group to provide stats and information that you would require. So we do have avenues to search out that information.
And then it can come back down to our
Yeah.
local level, our committee can look
Yeah.
at it and say, yeah, it's a big problem, or no, it's not. Type of thing. Gotcha.
We actually are in the process, as Pasquale said earlier, we are in the process of pulling individual data per township.
Great.
And so actually, I think we might even have, like, so when we actually meet in a couple of weeks to kind of flesh out your priorities and what strategies you want to adopt, we will actually have the stats for Puss Lynch. What we have noticed with the statistics, that the top three are truly the top three, so that would be falls, motor vehicle collisions, and intentional self-harm. But as Pasquale said, there are other ways that we can adopt the other different priorities within your municipality. But when we do talk in the next week or two, we'll be able to kind of discuss the different priorities, what your stats look like. And it's pulled from public health, like the hospital room visits, emergency room visits, as well as morbidity data. So we'll have all that information when we meet again.
Great. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, that's a great presentation. Did you want to do your motion, or?
Sure.
Yeah, I think this is a great opportunity for, us as a community to give boots on the ground feedback to what we need. but it can also impact the county as a whole, because we have similar issues throughout the county. And I mean, listen, we have a great place to live. We're in a good spot, but it's always good to get ahead of it. And what we're doing here is trying to take the pressure off emergency services, right? Trying to just get them the help they need prior to calling 911 is what it boils down
Yep,
to, right?
exactly.
So I've seen it. Fire departments have fire prevention. The ambulance, they've implemented programs where they're trying to get people help before they're falling in the washroom. So it's all great news. So I appreciate the work you're doing. So moved by Councillor Spoulos, seconded by Councillor Goida, that the Safe Communities Wellington County presentation regarding the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan update be received for information, and that the Township of Puslinch Council direct staff to work with Safe Communities Wellington County to include the Township of Puslinch in the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan being prepared for the County of Wellington, and that Councillor, do we have a volunteer? Don't want to be on this?
I can nominate.
Well, nominate.
Well, we'll take.
She
we'll
already
take-
put her hand
She
up.
put her hand up. So let's say, Council- anybody else want to run against her? Okay. Councillor Bailey. Work with Safe Communities Wellington County to establish a local Puslinch chapter. And would that not? Could she not be our representative on the leadership group as well?
Totally can.
Right?
We can have more than one if we want
Just add it
to.
to
So.
your portfolio, Sarah. And are you-
Isn't Matthew on our leadership group?
I thought Matt. Sorry, am I stepping on your toes, Matt?
Oh, no, that's fine. I'm still there, and I don't mind passing it on to
Sorry.
Sarah at all. I'm going to stay on the farm safety one anyway, so.
I misunderstood. I thought you and I had a conversation that maybe you wanted her on the leadership. I don't want to
Yeah,
step on your
that's fine.
toes. Let's just leave it as is.
Yeah, my suggestion is, as the presenters made, that it can have two. You'd have one on the main and one at the lower, and the lower
Okay.
one comes up to the top.
We'll leave it as
Yeah,
it's
leave it for
written.
now. We'll just fix
Always
it
tweak
later.
it, yeah. See how it's working. So, all in favor of that?
Yep.
Congratulations, Councillor Bailey. Thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you for your time. Yes,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Good work.
Have a great afternoon. You too. And then we'll invite Nestle Waters down for the recycling presentation. So you just gonna get your presentation up on the TV. Sorry, Councillor Ballmer, I misunderstood. I thought,
Well, I figured we'd do that when we have the appointment to committees,
sure.
you know.
Yep, absolutely. You're doing a fantastic job. I just. All right, we're ready to go. Welcome.
Thank you.
Whenever you're ready, maybe some introductions
All
for
right.
some members that might not recognize.
Sure. Well, good afternoon, Mayor Seeley, council, and staff. My name's Andrea Samard, Natural Resource Manager for Nestle Waters, and I've got Ken Friesen here, who perhaps you can introduce yourself quickly before we get into it.
Sure. I'm the president of Reclay Stewart Edge, which is the company which is helping Nestle Waters and has helped Nestle Waters implement these kind of projects and programs that we're talking about. We've been working with Nestle Waters for the last 12 years or so.
All right. So I'm here today. I'm excited to be here to present a project that I think would be great for our community here in Puslinch. It's an opportunity really to enhance recycling in our community. It's a project that was initiated and is going to be fully funded by Nestle Waters Canada. It's similar to the Public Spaces Recycling Project we recently did in Erin, just for familiarity. And then Ken is going to walk you through some slides that we have. And then once we get through the slides and your questions, I guess our ask today is to ask you for permission to work with staff to really work through this project, because I think it'd be a great thing here. So I'll leave Ken to go through the slides.
Okay. Just one more word of introduction before I get started. In terms of my own background, I spent 10 years on a small city council in Manitoba and was also on the FCM board for 3 years. And so all of that to say that I respect and understand a little bit about municipal decision-making. And also about being closer to the people than any other level of government. So I'm always happy to be in front of municipal councils in various places in the country and I've been involved in the whole recycling business for the last over 25 years, and I'm only 40 years old. But I'll try and keep my comments concise for a couple of reasons. One, to respect your time here. Secondly, I think this project is pretty straightforward. And thirdly, because this is what I do, I can get excited and go on, and I don't I want to respect your time. A couple of things, and we've introduced ourselves, Nestle and Reclay Stewart Edge. We do work with a wide variety, not only the beverage industry, but a wide variety of recycling industries, not only in Canada, but we do some work in Europe and also in the US. And we also started something in Manitoba called CBCRA Recycle Everywhere, which this project is largely based on. Having said that, we did some initial pilots with Nestle Waters in Sarnia, Niagara region, 10 years ago, which provided the basis for what we're doing in Manitoba now. And so I say that by way of background. And it's, in terms of the project goals, quite straightforward. 70%, approximately 70% of beverages are consumed away from home. And so the need for some kind of recycling away from home. For people, I use the example, people don't generally walk down the street with their box of noodles and say, oh, I'm finished my noodles now, where do I put this box? Those are things you consume at home, but people walk down the street in parks, ball diamonds, arenas, etc., with beverage containers, and why the need for public space recycling. Secondly, convenience drives recovery. In Manitoba, we've moved the needle from 42% to 69% in a couple of years for beverage container recycling. The PET recycling rate, PET bottles, or number one plastic bottles, is 77%. And that in a few short years, and convenience is part of that. And we can say, well, people should really care more. They should do what they, do the right thing, etc., take it home with them. The fact of the matter is, if it's not convenient in our society, people won't do it. So a big part of the responsibility for industry, ourselves, is making it as convenient as possible, which this project is all about. Thirdly, litter reduction. We've found over the years that when you've got really good public space recycling bins, a byproduct is actually that the litter rate for beverage containers and other materials actually decreases a lot. And we talked about that for a number of years as a byproduct, a great byproduct of what we're doing, until we started realizing actually municipalities care as much about litter as they do about recycling, and it's not just a byproduct, but it's a really good part of the project. And finally, increased recycling. We need recycling rates to go up, and there's a variety of ways to do that. And this is one way that's been proven in a number of places to do that well. In terms of the timeline, and maybe just before I make a comment about timeline, my colleague Jaspreet and myself spent an hour with Mike Fowler just before this, touring your various sites and where the bins would go, etc. And you've got a great-looking county. You've got a public works department who actually knows what they're doing about this. Quite frankly, if you don't have a public works department that understands these kind of concepts, it's really, really hard. Council can decide things, we can provide bins, and it still doesn't work. And I'm convinced it'll work really well here. In terms of the timeline, February, this would be part of the kickoff, and working with Mike and identifying sites, etc., is all part of the site assessment and bin selection. And I'll talk about bins in just a minute. The bins would be placed in April. Most of your sites, fortunately, besides the skating rink site or the hockey rink site, are sites that are used in summer, more so than in winter, the soccer, ball diamonds, etc. So placing them in April would work fine. We would organize and commit to public education, both signage around, close to the bins, etc., as well as social media and working with your local media to promote the new bins. Finally, Councillor Boomer talked in the previous presentation about measurement and statistics, and we actually think that's really important. And part of how we measure success is measuring those kinds of things, and we do that through public waste audits. So we would have someone here for a whole week, sometime in June, who would actually measure what is being recycled, how much of the containers are still ending up in the garbage stream, what is the litter situation in the regions of the bins at the various parks, etc. And that would happen in June with a final report towards the end of August or September. So that would be, in a nutshell, the timeline. And we've done, I don't know if we've done hundreds of these, we've done many of these, and that's probably why I say this one looks very straightforward. And we've got results from all kinds of places in terms of the improvements in recycling and reduction of litter. There's a sample of the bins that would be used. The bottom one is is simply a recycling bin. What we're proposing here, and what Nestle is willing to pay for, is what we call duals. They're garbage on one side and recycling on the other side. It's really, really important that, and it sounds really elementary, I know, but it's really, really important that bins be paired. If people have to walk 30 feet with their recyclables, or if they have to walk 30 feet with their garbage, too many people will just say, no, I'll just throw it in the nearest bin. So we always make sure that bins are paired beside each other. And I know it sounds silly and elementary, but it's actually really important. And so I don't have a picture of that bin there, the duals, but we're looking at about 25 of those duals for the various locations.
I think there's a picture here on the next slide.
There is a picture, thank you. That's right, on the next slide. And some of the other bins are event bins, like the round plastic ones in your community hall, which can be stacked and put out when you need them, and then restacked so that they're not necessarily out all the time. The other ones are sort of more permanently placed. We talked about project measurement. Again, I maybe jumped ahead a little bit, but really, really important to see actually how, what is changing, how is consumer citizen behavior changing with the bins, and all of those things: litter, contamination rates, and recycling rates. 3 different things, all important, and all of them take education. All of them are a shared responsibility. We can't do everything. At the end of the day, consumers or citizens still have to make a decision. But if the decision is really, really convenient for them, there's a much more likely chance that they're going to put it into the right bin. This is just a sample of our communications that we've got a sort of a wide band of communications that we do, and we change up every year. And we also do social media, so that because increasingly people, especially younger people, are watching less TV, and they're getting their news online, and they're getting a lot of things through social media. So it becomes important, and we're still working to see how we can geo-target just Puss Lynch. One of the problems, I won't get too much in the weeds here, but one of the problems is you've got so many communities right around you that geo-targeting for Puss Lynch is a little more difficult than some other places, but we're going to work with that. Town of Erin results, the recycling, and they had a not bad recycling rate of 74%, increased to 87% with the project we did there, and the contamination rate decreased by 17%. And contamination is really, really important for your recycler. You read about this in the news all the time. It's an issue across Canada. And there's so many more things that can be recycled now that people, quite frankly, often get confused and don't know, does that coffee cup go in or does it not go in? And so then they throw it in. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. They throw it in because they want to make sure that it does get recycled if it possibly can, and depending where you are, it can actually be contamination. So it's an issue everywhere, but these bins and servicing them really helps. Finally, in terms of outcomes that we're looking for and that we're committing to is enhanced recycling options. These are attractive bins, as we were discussing with Mr. Fowler. They are powder coated. We have had them out for years already in outdoor environments, and they don't fade. The paint doesn't start coming off them, etc., which is really important in terms of appearance for everyone. Reduced litter is another part of and a really growing, increasingly important part of the reason for doing this. Increased recycling, of course. And having an informed and engaged public is also another really important part. If it was just a matter of putting out the bins, we could do that in an hour or 3 hours, maybe maybe a day, because your township is quite large. But engaging the public is really, really important, and is part of what we're committed to, because it takes both parts. Finally, we want, and we've done this in other places, so I'm brave enough to say it up there, we want citizens to be proud of a cleaner community. We want your citizens to be able to look back and to be able to talk with you and say, yeah, you know what, our ball diamonds, our soccer parks, etc., are cleaner places now that we've done this. And that's one of the outcomes that we want to be able to measure at the end of the year as well. So with that, we'll turn it over to any questions.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. I find it very frustrating when I go into neighboring municipalities for sports for my children, and there's just a giant black can and everything goes into it. And a lot of the municipalities have sorting at other, parts of their departments, and but for some reason, hockey rinks and parks, it's just for whatever reason it is, it's just we haven't started sorting at them. So I think this is a great initiative. We all need to do a better job. I know at the county level there's a lot of concern that we only have one landfill site, and they're starting cell 2, and they are really pushing for diversion to extend that life of that. So this is a great component of it. As a municipality, we can, improve our sorting, and as long as I see some difficulties with the Public Works Department, I don't know where our waste goes currently, if we even recycle or not. I don't want to put you on the spot or anything right now, but, there might be some budgetary implications to now sourcing a new garbage pickup, because now we're doing recycle. I don't know, but I think as a community and as a municipality, it's something that we should do. Okay, so Councillor Billy.
Yeah, I guess, just for clarity, I'm curious too, who's picking up and who's emptying the bins on a regular basis?
Yes.
How often is that?
Yeah. In your case, and Mr. Fowler can speak to it directly, but from our discussions previously and also today, your municipal staff currently services your bins and would continue to, and the recyclables go into one of the blue bins that gets picked up by the county, or not one of them, but into the blue bins that get picked up by the county. So the county would continue to pick up that collated material, if you like, and municipal staff would continue to service the bins. And there's not, you've got, or you will have recycling and garbage bins, but the amount of material that needs to be collected isn't more than it was before. It's just put by consumers into the right categories.
I worked at the Y years ago, and we had this wonderful recycling. We had 3 bins all set up in the lobby, And it drove me crazy because at the end of the day, all 3 would just get put in the same bag and put in the dumpster. And it used to drive me crazy. And so I just want to make sure something like that isn't going to happen where we've got, so I like your idea of having both bins, the garbage and the recycling together. Just one thing that came up, or 2 things. One is, have you had any issues so far with what you've got with graffiti or anything on the cans? Is that ever an issue?
Yes, but I would say it depends on the community.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a perfect community out there, but in general, it's not much of an issue. What is more of an issue in cities is snowplows, like where they're on close to sidewalks, and the outdoor ones are metal, and they get dinged by snowplows in winter because we live in a snowy climate. That's more of a problem than actual graffiti. But occasionally graffiti happens, and has to be washed off. But it hasn't been a huge issue for us and we've worked in many communities.
And I would maybe recommend reaching out to Aaron to see if they've ever had that issue. We haven't heard of that. And their bins, their bins were installed recently, so they may have more information on that, but we haven't heard any.
I had just a thought of actually making a bin to encourage graffiti on it, where you had put your thing here and then they're not doing anything wrong. And then I guess my other question, so maybe it's to Mike, but let's say we have a hiking trail that's not very convenient to get to, or down where there is litter. I'm thinking, off of a back road, but putting a bin out there where it's going to keep the garbage in, but maybe not need to be picked up as often or something. Anyway.
As far as the back trail at the PCC, I would suggest a bin be placed at one end of where the trail either begins or ends. That would be a possibility that could be picked up every week. The new trail in Fox Run, there'll be a set of these containers placed there at the rest station.
Thank you.
Councillor Bomer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. Welcome. Interesting. I don't know. I must have got the wrong end of the stick when I was reading that this was going to be just about Nestle's water bottles and enhanced recycling of them. But I take it from your presentation, this is to help address all beverage containers, which are all made of plastic and are challenged for recycling. Is that correct? And it's not just Nestle's bottles we're worried about.
No, it's the bins are designed for beverage containers.
Perfect.
Whether they're plastic, cartons, glass, or metal. And
It's just a Nestle-initiated project for the better of the community.
Okay, so I'm trying to think back when we first opened the Optimist Recreation Center. I believe Nestle's contributed to the garbage containers for there too, did they not?
Yep, we have some old recycling bins in the community center, but living in this community, I'm at the soccer fields quite a bit with my children, and there's really no infrastructure on the outside of the the walls of the community center. So I thought that's how the idea sparked there, because we do have a lot of events, not just in the summer, but the Aberfoyle Fall Fair, et cetera, and it would be nice to have some permanent infrastructure within our community.
Okay, that's great. That's helpful because when I think to the containers that were provided previously, they were divided as well. They had a square hole for garbage and a round hole for plastic recycling or for recyclables.
Yeah, they've aged over the years, so it's probably a good time to refresh that as well. So, yep.
So it'll be the 10th anniversary of the farmers market, so the bins must be 10 years old this year as well. So.
Yep.
That's great. I appreciate this initiative, so thank you very much.
Councillor Goyda?
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for coming today. I would like to first just thank you for taking on this initiative and the work that's involved and the investment that's involved as well. I think it's a great initiative, and I think it's a very positive step for us as a township to provide an established recycling and garbage program in our public spaces, especially our exterior public spaces. And it's easy to identify and it's easy to understand. And I think that will go a long way. The only question I had, and you spoke about it, is the education component of it. And you mentioned that you would, as part of this program, do some signage and some social media. And I guess my question is just what the content of that education piece will be. Is it just that, is it just making people aware that these bins are now there, or is it also to help address some of the things like contamination that you spoke of, what things can and can't go in? You said that that's an important part of making this a successful project, but what is involved in that education piece to ensure that it is successful?
Good question. And we have promotion, what we call promotion or communications people that can probably answer that better in a technical way than I can. But we want to have a call to action in the communication, so people know that they need to decide to put it into the recycling bin. Is always part of it. Contamination is almost always part of our communication these days because it's an issue across the country. And so we would work together with the township in terms of making sure that we identify what's accepted in your system and what's not accepted, and so that the messaging is consistent on that part as well. We would likely also have a message about litter as part of that, and it may not be please don't litter, but more positive. When you do this, when you recycle this, when you make sure that you're taking care to recycle the right things, there's also going to be less litter in the community, and that's a good thing for everyone. So I think all three of those components will be part of it, or I shouldn't say I think, all three of those components will be part of it, and it gets like the one slide. Our communications people are more creative than I am, and come up, and we have a variety of things that we can draw from, but those are the key messages, if you like.
Okay, thanks.
And again, without jumping too far ahead, we've asked the question about do you want to have the township's logo on the bins? We can still do that at this point in time, but so we wouldn't go ahead on something like that without speaking with the township. On the communication as well, we would not go ahead without working together with Nestle and the township to make sure that the messaging is right for the township. That's born from lots of years' experience and some mistakes.
Okay.
We always talk to the townships or to the municipality.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Sploos?
Yeah, you answered your two last answers answered my two questions, consultation with us on the education piece and the markings on the containers. Just one last question. By the way, I applaud for you taking the leadership role in doing this. It's really good to see a community-led entity doing something for us.
We're here. I'm glad to be here. I'm here because Nestle is bringing me here. So let's be clear.
Who's going to own these cans? Is it you or the township? You're donating them to the township? Okay. And I guess I just have a question for our staff. Do you envision no net cost to us as a result of this?
No, I do not. There'll be a couple new locations where these cans will be placed, but as far as Monday morning pickup and sort, there will not be much added hours toward employee time.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll encourage you to reach out to the Solid Waste Committee at the county. I'll give you an example. In Wellington County, you can recycle black plastic, and the reason for that is it's manually sorted the contractor that collects it, whereas a lot of municipalities use a laser, and a laser can't differentiate between the conveyor belt and black plastic, so that's why it's not recycled. So, yeah, so we have higher recycle rates in Wellington County, due to that it's more manual, labor intensive, but we're getting higher percentages. And I also want to just point out that these aren't necessarily beverage container recycling bins, because if you come to the park with a sandwich in some tin foil or some other recyclable, just because it's not round and not a beverage container, it can still go in there. So I think that should be part of the message as well. I get that we're seeing that beverage containers are a bit of a hot topic right now and they're not getting recycled enough, and we're targeting that, but I don't want people to believe, oh, I have a recyclable here, but it can't go in there because it's not a beverage container. So really, we're just collecting all recyclables. So I think it's a great initiative. I really appreciate Nestle taking this initiative for the community and coming forward. As you know, money's tight around this municipality, and for you to step up to the plate with this is great. So we have a motion. We've amended it, so the two councillors that moved it, it says here, so it says, moved by Councillor Goyda, seconded by Councillor Sepoulos, that council receives a presentation by Andrian Simard, Nestle Waters, with respect to enhanced recycling for Puslinch. We've added that council directs staff to work with Nestle Waters to establish an enhanced recycling program in Puslinch. Are you comfortable with that? Yeah. Okay. Discussion? Councillor Palmer?
Yeah, well, yes.
Oh,
Okay. Thank you. I had just one question that was brought up by the delegation regarding putting our names on them, since I guess apparently we'll own them after the fact. Do we want to have if they're willing to include in the gift having our logo or whatever put on, our new logo put on it?
I'm supportive of it. I love our new logo.
So I heard that from the delegation, this is the time to decide. I don't know if that meant today or we have more time to decide.
I would say within the next 10 days.
Okay.
I think we can make a decision right now.
I would suggest we leave it up to staff to decide if they want logos on the cans. I think that's...
We would support, okay.
Yeah, I would support staff making the decision.
Can we add that to the resolution?
Councillor Bailey?
That was subtle.
Good. We're just discussing that amendment to that motion. If any, Councillor Goyda?
No.
All in favor? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Look forward to working together.
Thank you, likewise.
Right, so back to communications, and once Courtney sits down, the Director of Finance can have the floor for that report. Where is it?
We voted.
BMA Management Consulting? When she sits down here.
Okay. So the County of Wellington works with BMA Consulting Group to collect all the data from the member municipalities as it relates to this study. So I believe this is about maybe the third or fourth year that the county and its member municipalities have participated. And so the type of data that's collected is the annual financial information return data, our user fees and charges, development charges, any economic development programs that we have in place in our municipality. And I open it up to you guys if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bailey.
There was a lot of data in that report.
And you can follow up with staff
Yeah.
later as well.
Right.
So,
Actually, one question I had is just what economic development programs are we doing? So I can follow up.
no,
I can speak
Yeah.
to some of them.
Okay.
So we recently completed our logo and brand strategy in 2018, and so that was one of the first steps in implementing some of the recommendations that came out of previous reports that were done. And we are working on the signage initiative currently as it relates to the Main Street area. And again, that's grant funded as well. Our community improvement plan also has grant programs in place for businesses within the main corridor area as well. And so that application process is on our website. So those are a few of the community improvement, the economic development programs that we currently have in place.
Okay, thank you. Because I think this had some neat examples of some other municipalities that are doing some that maybe we can look at down the road. Thank you.
Councillor Bomer?
Yeah, thank you. Just to build on what Councillor Bailey just mentioned, in terms of other examples, I was quite intrigued by what Ottawa had included in theirs, and acknowledging that their official plan was a key part of their economic development, and acknowledging that transit and their natural spaces and the natural environment are also an important part of a vibrant community and part of their economic development plan, which you don't often see municipalities talk about those things in terms of economic development. In terms of items that I kind of stuck out for me in this report was it's always an interesting reminder. I know this doesn't represent every municipality in the province. When we look at the population of the province and the population that's represented in the study, I think it does represent about 80% of the population. And we come up at the 7th smallest municipality in the group that was included in this report. But if you look at the growth rates from 2011, 2016, we're about the same as Toronto and greater than Cambridge and Hamilton, and on a percentage of growth for our population, which is really something to, puts it in context that we're not just a stuffy little town sitting around doing nothing. People are moving here. But it's also, there was an interesting line in there identifying that the province is predicting that the population growth in the province is planned to decline over the next to 2021 from 1.8% to 1% per annum. And so it wouldn't be surprising, since we're sort of tracking right along with the provincial growth, we should maybe plan for that as well. That it's the province is already predicting that decline, so we should be prepared for that. As usual, we're near the top of things in the assessment value and in the household incomes. So I think in household income, we're second only to King Township, which is, I don't know exactly where King Township is, but we used to be second to Oakville in terms of our assessment, the value of our assessment. And we've fallen from second place to fifth place in this group. So it's still an expensive place to live, or the property values are high here. But household incomes are also high. I think they said it was $189,000 was the average household income. I'm doing my best to keep that down under $200,000. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. The one thing that did stand out for me, though, that I thought we might want to have in mind when we do our official plan update, and it's consistent with what we've been talking about in terms of employment lands when we talk to the province about losing land to aggregate extraction, and is that the ratio of residential to non-residential building permits. When I look at our figures, I think we're looking at 13% are non-residential, and the average in the group was 34%. Now, I know we can't do apples-to-apples comparisons, but this does point to a fact that maybe we need to look at, I know we have a surplus of employment lands overall in the county, but I think this might be something we could use to talk to the county or the province about allowing us to calculate employment land designation differently, to make sure that we have enough employment land and non-residential land available for people who want to invest in it. And also helps, I think, lend some credibility to the council's decision regarding a recent application where we wanted to make sure that the zoning was for a use that included a building, which is important because these are talking about building permits for non-residential. So those are takeaways I got from this report, and I always find it helpful just to put ourselves in context. I wish we could do more apples-to-apples comparisons, but at least it helps us put ourselves in context about how we're doing against what other municipalities are having to deal with. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bomer. Councillor Goyda?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Spose?
Yeah, I had questions, and staff provided a thorough response. A couple of observations I had was the aging population we have in our township.
Yeah.
Take a look at the comparing us to the average. You're looking at 45 to 64, we got 35% versus 29, and over 65, 22 versus 19. So it tells us there's not as much young people staying or moving it to Puslinch, and I think we got to think about turning that around if we want to be sustainable. That's basically all I had on that.
Well, I have one comment to that Sarah, Jessica, and I are trying to keep that stat down like Matthew. Okay, so thank you for that. All right, we'll move on to IG, I believe, unless there's any further comments. No? Okay, so the first IG item is the winter maintenance chemicals challengers and change. Any questions or comments on that one? We have AMO infrastructure and court security funding news. Any questions or comments? No. AMO's pre-budget submission. No. Okay. The AMO watch file, January 23rd, 2020. Meeting. And this AMO watch file, January 30th. All right. City of Sarnia, deep geologic repository. Any questions or comments on that one? All right, I'll trade them a repository for a couple of gravel pits, maybe. No, I'm just joking.
I think there was an update in
Yeah.
the news today about.
Oh, was there?
Yeah, how it was turned down.
Oh,
So they're
wow.
looking to go north, which does raise some concerns about
Transportation.
Transportation.
And that's what I asked at Roma. I was just in the hall. I asked why it was being chosen there, and it was because they were trying not to transport it as far. But that's obviously maybe they've changed direction on that. Nestle press release. Any questions or comments? Rainy River District Municipal Association.
Just wondering if we want to support that motion. Ask the question of staff, are we in the same boat? And answer is yes.
Yes.
And I wouldn't mind supporting their motion type of thing, to at least puts us in the picture that we have the same problem.
Can I get a seconder for that motion?
Yeah, I would.
Councillor Ballmer?
This,
And then I'll let Councillor Bailey, do you want to comment on that?
No.
No? Okay. Councillor Ballmer, you seconded, but do you want to make some comments?
yeah, I just think that this was good timing. I remember it was just last month in our budget meeting, I asked staff for an update on this, and Rainy River provided it. So,
Yeah.
perfect timing. No, this is good. And last time this came up, council did, as Councillor Spoulis is suggesting, support it. Because we do have the main CP line that goes through the south, across the whole width of the township. So we did support it last time.
We have Guelph Junction really run through there,
Yeah.
so there's a couple.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Gwynn?
Yeah, I'd be happy to support that.
I'm supportive of it as well. Now, are we just gonna? Yeah, okay. All right, all in favor? Carried. All right, the Township of Maddock Resolution, joint and several liability. Any questions or comments on that one? No. Town of Collingwood, Conservation Authorities. Any questions or comments? No, okay. Last one, Town of Orangeville, Resolution, Environmental Awareness. Any questions or comments? No.
Are they looking for support on
That one?
that? Too sure what.
Well, it's more for information, it looks.
Information,
We did support all the programs of the Grand River Conservation Authority. We did do a motion, can't remember which council meeting, can't recall if you were on board yet.
Right.
But we did support all the programs of the GRCA.
All right, anything further? No. Moved by Councillor Spoulis, seconded by Councillor Goyda, that the intergovernmental affairs correspondence items listed on the council agenda for February 5th, 2020 council meeting be received. All in favor? Carried. All right. He's done. All right. Don't have any under reports. Nothing new under finance department. Nothing under admin, planning. Mayor's update, I didn't provide it in advance, but municipal affairs and housing, we've booked the date for the meeting here. I haven't sent the invite out yet, but I believe it's the 14th of February. So we'll be discussing, talk about those employment lands, but we'll invite the CAO and county staff are going to come down.
Oh, excellent.
And we'll have our staff there, and so they're coming up from, I believe, London. So that was just because of our efforts at Roma. So that's excellent. And I booked a meeting with a institution that owns some lands that we were just wondering about their aggregate operations. So that's not going to happen until March 20th, I believe, was the first time that our schedule could come together. So that's just, so it's good. Yeah, it's progress. So, Councillor Spillis.
Yeah, we've had a very warm reception by all these ministries. I was wondering if we should be thanking through our MPP, sending a letter of thanks and for the warm reception and the willingness to meet with us, basically.
I was working, I penned one to the Minister of Natural Resources with the assistance of our CAO, and that one went out already. And then things kind of piled on. We haven't managed to draft up the other 3, but that was my intent.
That's when it works, that's great.
That was my intent.
Okay,
so
that's good.
I'll just thank you for the reminder. I'll make sure I get onto that. Any other questions or comments? Any notices of motion today? Councillor Spillis.
Yes, I've been working, as you're aware, on the Internet Committee, bringing improved Internet service. The province has announced that they have $150 million available for improving Internet service in Ontario and rural communities, includes cell phone, of course. And our chair of the committee and I met with our CAO, and we're coming up with a plan to try to tap into this funding. And we may come back here and request some seed money to help with that. So I'm putting this notice forward that we may be coming back. Might not be the next meeting or the subsequent meeting, but at the appropriate time we'll come forward.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's good.
Nice to see some results. That's
Doing a good job, Councillor Spillis. Everybody appreciates the hard work. An individual reached out to me, I think I spoke to you offline about it.
Oh, yeah?
Mr. Hunt is his name, Ethan Hunt, and he wanted to get in touch with you, so I forwarded your email address, your councillor email address. So he'll probably be reaching out in the next few days. I think he wants to see if he can assist you guys on the committee. So.
No problem. You sent one in already and I responded.
Oh, did he? Oh, okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
Excellent.
You were copied in.
Excellent. Oh, I didn't see that yet. Okay, anything further? No? Committee minutes.
Oh, sorry, next item, sorry.
Moved by Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Ballmer, that the minutes of the following meetings be adopted as written and distributed. October 21st, 2019, Heritage Committee minutes. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Okay, now municipal announcements. Councillor Spillis.
Yeah, I have 2. On January 30th, I attended the open house on the Black Creek Bridge. This is the one going over the Speed River. And they're not looking to start construction until 2022 or even 2023, so that's well off type of thing. The concept they had was building a new bridge to the north of the existing bridge and to be lane in each direction, and they plan to retain the existing bridge as a pedestrian walkway. So they plan to have a sort of a hard surface, semi-hard surface walkway on the west side of town, Line Road from 34 that swings up and across over the bridge and then sort of meanders through their community. So that seems to be the plan. There will be some other meetings too as they narrow down the type of design and all that sort of stuff. So we'll be apprised of when those meetings are. A second thing is the Grand River Conservation Authority. They're updating their source water protection plan. There's 2 meetings that we can attend. One is February the 6th at the Elora District Community Center, and then the next one is February the 12th at the Marden Community Center on Wellington Road 30. So that's probably be the closest one to us for anybody that's interested. That's basically it.
Thank you. Any other municipal announcements? Councillor Ballmer?
Yeah, just one I alluded to earlier during the Safe Communities discussion at our Joanne McQuaig, who provides the 40 Essentials workshops, I invited her down to speak to our local Optimist Club about doing a 40 Essentials workshop here in the southern part of the county. As you heard, this is something they put on in the northern part of the county and in center Wellington. And the club is interested in putting one on. We haven't picked a date yet, but they've already identified they'd like to do this for coaches and school bus drivers here in the township. And when we organize this, we'd like to make sure that anybody we haven't thought of has been thought of. So if other members of council can think of someone else that needs to be invited, please share that with myself or now Councillor Bailey, and so that we can get the word out when the workshop is organized, we can get the invitations out to the appropriate people, because we want to make sure that as many people can attend as possible. They'd like to have at least about between 20 and 50 is their ideal number. They've had more, but they think our hall, our community center would be ideal for it, so I'm looking forward to having that come off within the next month and a half, so.
Excellent. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bulmer. Any further?
I just wanted to say that I think sometime before, that before our next council meeting takes place, the Family Day celebrations at the Puslinch Community Center. So hopefully we can all attend, and should be a good event. It always is. So that's
It's
it.
cold.
Yeah.
It's cold. Councillor Bailey?
I was just going to add, I know the Rotary Pasta Dinner for Sunrise is on the 14th of February, coming up on Friday night. And the Whistle Stop fundraiser is coming up on the 29th of February.
That's the dance.
The dance, yeah.
Yahoo.
All right. Okay. Any unfinished business? See none? Nope. Get some bylaws for me. All right. Moved by Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Balmer, that the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 012-2020 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council for the corporation of the Township of Puslinch at its meeting held on the 5th day of February. All in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Balmer, seconded by Councillor Bailey, the council hereby adjourns at 2:31 PM. All in favor?